Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin.
My dad raised his wine glass like he was hosting a gala, not a cramped Thanksgiving dinner in our dated Connecticut kitchen. He stood there all puffed up, laughing too loud with his coworkers, like this was some damn networking event. Meanwhile, Mom was still rushing around the kitchen, her face shiny with heat, carrying out the same glazed ham she's made every year since I was 10. She set it down in the center of the table like it was a centerpiece, not a meal. "Still hot," she said, brushing her hands on her apron. Nobody thanked her. Nobody offered to help. I just sat there, third seat on the left, same as always, already regretting coming. Quick note, before we start, how's your day going and where are you joining from? There were 10 of us total. My parents, me, my sister Rachel, her husband Travis, 2 of Dad's work friends, Brenda and some guy named Dale, and a couple of neighbors who never turned down free food. And as usual, it only took a minute for the conversation to turn into a performance. Dad cleared his throat, lifted his glass again. 53 and finally made it. Regional director, baby! Everyone clapped like it meant something. Couldn't have done it without this crew. He started pointing people out one by one, giving a little bio like he was reading off a LinkedIn summary. When he got to Rachel, his chest actually puffed. My daughter, corporate finance manager at Grandview Capital. Smart as hell. Killer instinct. Then his eyes landed on me. He smirked like he'd been waiting all night for this. And this one here, the Wanderer. I froze with my fork halfway to my mouth. Still chasing dreams in that handyman business. Lives in some one-bedroom walk-up like a college kid. But hey, he builds one hell of a deck. He looked around the table for laughs, and of course, he got them. Rachel didn't miss her cue either. Did you ever fix that toilet you broke trying to replace the wax ring? That got a bigger laugh. Even Travis chuckled, and he once failed to hang a picture straight in their living room. I just kept chewing. It was almost 6:45 p.m. I glanced at the clock above the fridge, right on time. Then came the question that always lands like a punch. So, what do you actually do? It was Brenda, smiling like she didn't mean anything by it. Before I could open my mouth, Dad jumped in again. He fixes sinks, paints fences, makes decent tips. From what I hear, I muttered construction consulting. Without looking up, nobody heard, or maybe they did, and didn't care. Everyone laughed. Again. I reached for the mashed potatoes. One more forkful, just a little longer. They kept laughing like it was some sitcom, and I was the punchline. "Following your dreams," Brenda joked, pouring herself another glass of wine. Hey, if I could live rent-free and fix screen doors all day, I'd do it too. I nodded along, chewing slow, keeping my mouth shut. Not worth it. Not yet. Rachel leaned in like she was sharing something real cute. You still driving that old Chevy truck? Or did you upgrade to a used van now that you're booked out till, what, Thursday? Travis laughed way too hard at that one. I took a sip of water, eyes on the ham. My fork tapped against the plate like a metronome. They only saw what I let them see. That truck, wrapped in Ridgefield Buildworks branding, sure, but they didn't know I owned the damn company. 900 employees, 6 states, a dozen contracts in active development, not counting the government bids. I had 3 site managers in Boston alone, and last month, I closed on the purchase of Keystone Supply, the same company that stocked Franklin Realty's job sites, including Westgate. They didn't know, and I kept it that way. 3 years ago, I bought a logistics firm, streamlined our warehouse-to-site operations, slashed costs by half. I'd been stacking wins while they kept swinging at my knees. Let 'em. Dad clapped the table with his hand, signaling another shift in spotlight. Rachel just got a bump at work. Senior project lead now. They're putting her on their merger team for the first quarter cheers. Toasts. Even Mom teared up a little. Then he turned toward me, beer in hand, like he was giving me the floor. And my son, still out there with his little handyman company. Don't know where he finds the time between all the nap breaks. More laughs. I looked up, finally. How's the Westgate Mall expansion going? I asked, wiping my mouth with my napkin. Dad sat up straighter. That's our biggest job yet. 18 million in contracts, all commercial, full gut and rebuild. Retail, restaurants, offices, the whole deal. He pointed at Dale. You should have seen the mess we inherited. Parking lot had sinkholes, tenants were threatening lawsuits. Now it's the crown jewel. Brenda jumped in, nodding hard. Wouldn't have happened without the groundwork from that site consultant. Whoever that guy was, freaking miracle worker, I smirked, but didn't say a word. Dad leaned back, all proud. We were lucky to land him. Rachel even helped model some of the cost recovery. Rachel nodded like she was running the whole damn operation. I hope we can keep him on through phase 2, Brenda added. Guy had eyes on everything. Grading, traffic flow, vendor rotation. Never seen anything like it. I kept eating. That site consultant was me. I'd overseen the project top to bottom, under a pseudonym company I used for contracted consulting work. Oversaw the logistics, directed the grading contractor, and signed off on the surveyor they bragged about at their last happy hour. They didn't need to know that. Not yet. So you do commercial too? Dale asked, squinting a little. Dad didn't give me a chance to answer. Nah, he's more into private home stuff. Decks, basements, stuff like that. But hey, he's always busy. Got himself a waiting list. I set my fork down, wiped my hands. Consulting, actually, I said again. Still calm. Mostly site development and integration. Nobody even blinked. Rachel turned back to her wine. Brenda asked Mom for the sweet potatoes. Dad leaned in to whisper to Dale. He likes to make it sound fancier than it is. But he's good with his hands, I almost laughed. They had no clue I'd been building Ridgefield for over a decade. No clue I'd sat across from Daniel Young at Landmark Holdings just 2 weeks ago and finalized the paperwork for a full-scale acquisition of Franklin Realty Group. Their company, they only saw my flannel shirt and scuffed work boots. Good. That was the plan. Let him talk. Let him brag. I was done trying to be understood. Now I was just waiting. The knock came right at 7. One sharp knock, then 2 more. Firm, like whoever was out there wasn't planning to wait long. Mom's hand froze over the casserole dish. We expecting someone else? No, Rachel said, already annoyed. That better not be Beth from next door again. I swear if she wants to borrow sugar during dinner. I stood up. Dad chuckled, not even looking up. Probably one of his clients. Left a ladder in somebody's yard again. Another round of laughs. I headed for the door. When I opened it, Daniel Young was standing there in a dark gray wool coat, black leather case in one hand, gloves in the other. His hair was combed back neat, suit collar sharp under his coat. Everything about him screamed serious money. He looked past me for a second, taking in the house. Then he smiled. Evening. I'm looking for Ridgewalker? I nodded. That's me. He stepped forward and lowered his voice just slightly. We need to finalize the acquisition terms before next week's filing. I have the new packet here. Just need your signature and approval on the language. I stepped aside. We can talk in the dining room. His footsteps echoed against the wood floors. Calm, controlled, heads turned one by one as he entered. Dad squinted. Can I help you, buddy? This is Daniel Young, I said, loud enough for the whole table. He's the CEO of Landmark Holdings. Daniel gave a polite nod. Evening. Brenda actually dropped her fork. Rachel looked like she was trying to place him from a news article. He's here on business, I said, pulling out a chair at the end of the table. Landmark's the parent company managing the acquisition of Franklin Realty Group. Silence, heavy, immediate. Dad blinked. What? Daniel opened his case and pulled out a thick folder. Final purchase terms for Franklin's full transition under Ridgefield Buildworks. We've already closed on the vendor supply chain and site logistics firm. This is the last leg. Dad gave a short, stunned laugh. Okay, no. There's gotta be a mix-up. We're not selling. I would know you would, Daniel agreed, setting the folder on the table. Except the acquisition path went through layered subsidiaries. Ridgefield acquired Westgate Commercial Holdings in July. That firm acquired Keystone Supply last month. Keystone is Franklin Realty's top vendor. Rachel turned to Dad, eyes wide. Wait, that's... Daniel continued, flipping a tab. Then Ridgefield executed a merger agreement with Franklin's private debt holder 3 days ago. Final control transfers pending this meeting and sign-off. Dad's jaw clenched. No. That can't be right. We never signed... You don't need to, I cut in. You pledged control to your operating capital back in February. Your partner did the rest. Brenda's hand covered her mouth. Oh my God. Daniel tapped the folder once, calm as ever. Your brokerage is now formally being integrated into Ridgefield Buildworks. I looked at my dad. His mouth opened, then closed again. He wasn't smiling anymore. Daniel flipped to the next page like he was reading out a lunch order. Ridgefield Buildworks will be the parent firm overseeing the full merger of Franklin Realty Group effective January 1st. Brenda's head snapped toward me. Wait, Ridgefield Buildworks? That's you? I nodded once. Yeah, her mouth dropped open. You were the site consultant on Westgate. Dad looked between us, lost. What? She pointed at me, hand trembling slightly. That was you? You're the one who mapped the site reflow, shut down the sinkhole problems, built the contractor chain? You're the one who fixed the fire code delay? Daniel answered for me. He's more than the consultant. He's the founder and majority owner. The air got sucked right out of the room. Nobody moved. Forks were still on plates, untouched. Steam still rising from the damn green bean casserole. Daniel slid a page forward. Ridgefield Buildworks has an operating revenue of $760 million annually, with 14 active regional development contracts across 6 states, 912 full-time employees, 0 debt, and no external investors. Rachel dropped her fork. What the hell? She muttered, almost under her breath. Dad didn't speak. He was staring straight ahead, jaw tight, blinking like he couldn't focus. Daniel kept going. As part of the terms, all Franklin staff will be retained. No one's losing their job. We're increasing your technology budget by 40%, restructuring back-end operations. And Franklin's founder, Mr. Frank Walker, will be offered the title of Regional Development Manager. Comes with a salary bump and triple pension benefits. Still nothing. Dead quiet. But ultimately, Daniel added, eyes flicking to me, final authority, strategic oversight, and regional contract decisions will route through Ridge. My mom gripped the edge of the table. She looked like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. I reached into my pocket, unlocked my phone, and turned the screen to her. Here, I said, tap that. Business account balance. She hesitated, then took it in both hands. Her breath hitched. 218 million, she whispered. Rachel leaned over to see. What? She looked at me like she didn't even recognize my face. Brenda let out a slow exhale. Oh my God. I stayed seated. No smirking, no drama, just waited. Dad blinked again. Finally spoke. I don't understand. I looked right at him. Because you never wanted to. That landed hard. His mouth shut. You decided a long time ago what I was. And nothing I did, not the hours, not the clients, not the houses I built, not the contracts I negotiated, none of it mattered. You saw my tool belt and shut the door. I wasn't yelling. I didn't need to. You didn't want to understand. You wanted something easier to mock. He leaned back slowly, like he needed to catch himself. Daniel didn't move, didn't interrupt, just waited, professional and still. Rachel looked at Dad, then me, then back again. How long have you been doing this? I didn't answer yet. I let the silence breathe. It stretched longer than it should have. Brenda finally broke it. You've been running the biggest development firm in the region, and we've all been treating you like some part-time deck guy. I shrugged. You treated me exactly how I needed you to. Mom wiped at her eyes, still holding my phone. Nobody touched their food. Dad finally found his voice. You kept this from us because you were ashamed. I turned toward him, jaw tight. No, I kept this from you because I was tired of being underestimated in my own damn family. He flinched, like he expected me to soften it. I didn't. Every win I had, you questioned. Every time I took a step forward, you twisted it into pressure. You laughed at my business when it was still in the garage, mocked my clients when they were small time. I stopped telling you things because it was easier than getting talked down to every time I opened my mouth. Rachel's voice cut through. Wait, how many of our deals came from you? I grabbed my tablet from my bag and unlocked it. Here, I slid it across the table. She pulled it close, scrolling with one finger. Her face drained as she read. That's 11 contracts, I said. In the past 2 years, all routed through Ridgefield. Some directly. Some passed through vendors I own. You thought you were building Franklin on hustle and luck? Truth is, I was feeding you everything I didn't need for myself. Brenda leaned over Rachel's shoulder, her eyes scanning the list. Her mouth parted slightly, but she didn't speak. Daniel adjusted his tie, calm as ever. As of this quarter, roughly 70% of Franklin's current revenue is tied to Ridgefield referrals. Dad stared like someone had just kicked the chair out from under him. Mom covered her mouth with both hands. Her eyes were already red. I leaned forward. You were never a failure to me. I didn't want to take your company. I wanted to raise the floor beneath it. Dad didn't respond. His fingers drummed softly on the wood like he needed something to hold on to. I've been setting this up for 4 years. Quietly, carefully. I waited until you didn't need charity, until this wouldn't feel like a bailout. I wanted this to be a partnership, not a rescue. Rachel swallowed hard. So this whole time, you were backing us? I was watching, I said, seeing how long it would take for someone at this table to see me as more than the guy who paints walls. Dad shook his head slowly. You should have told me. No, I said. You should have wanted to know. He looked up. His eyes weren't angry, just tired, lost. Is this permanent? Yes. The contracts are signed. This isn't a power grab. You're still in charge of local operations. But the days of mocking me across the dinner table are over. I leaned back. Mom wiped her cheeks with a napkin. Nobody moved. Daniel slid the contract folder across the table toward me. Let's walk through it. I opened it without looking up. The leather binding creaked. My fingers landed right where they needed to. Page 4, Daniel said. Ownership structure and executive assignments. I read aloud. Frank Walker will assume the role of Chief Regional Development Officer. Dad looked up, confused. CRDO? Rachel repeated. Correct, Daniel said. A leadership position within the Ridgefield hierarchy. Reports directly to executive strategy. Oversees all multi-site development across your region. Dad blinked. What's the salary on that? I turned to page 6. $2.5 million annually, plus full benefits, pension, bonus eligibility. Rachel gasped. You're serious? Brenda pulled a notepad out of her purse, started writing. Jesus, she whispered. I leaned forward. I could have bought 5 bigger firms than Franklin, but I chose this one. You know why? No one answered. Because your clients trust you. Because you've built 30 years of relationships I couldn't duplicate with a billion-dollar budget. That's what I wanted to invest in. I tapped the folder. You built something real. I'm just giving it a better engine. Dad just sat there. He didn't reach for the contract, didn't smile, didn't say thank you. Daniel flipped to the lease agreement. As for the office building, Ridgefield Holdings purchased the full complex last month. Lease is under his name now. Brenda stopped writing. Rachel's eyes snapped to mine. Wait, what? I pulled out a printed deed from my folder and handed it to her. She scanned it like she didn't believe it. You bought the entire complex? Cash, I said. No loan. It's part of the structural support for the acquisition. Stability matters. Dad's face had gone pale. I didn't do this to take over, I told him. I did this because I believe in the business you built. Even when you didn't believe in me, Daniel closed the folder. Ownership has shifted. Ridge is now the majority shareholder. 61%. The words hung heavy in the room. Rachel leaned back in her chair like the floor had shifted underneath her. You structured this whole thing? I nodded. Carefully, quietly. On purpose, Dad finally spoke. You did this to elevate us. Without letting us know that's right? He ran a hand over his face. I thought you were just out there wasting time. Fixing gutters. And I let you believe that. His eyes watered. He didn't try to hide it. You wore that stupid tool belt every time you came around. Drove that beat-up truck. Kept things vague on purpose. Because if I'd come back here in a suit, you'd have turned it into a pissing contest, or worse, you'd have told yourself I got lucky. He nodded slowly, quiet, beaten. I let the silence stretch a few seconds. Then I spoke softer, still clear. I didn't want to show off. I wanted to build something that helped you, that respected the work you'd done. You taught me how to swing a hammer. Now I'm handing you the biggest job of your life. Brenda looked between us like she was watching 2 strangers meet for the first time. Rachel still had the deed in her hands. And the lease is permanent? As long as Franklin's part of Ridgefield, I said. Which it will be, because now we're built to last. Mom cleared her throat, voice soft and shaky. Does this mean you'll still come to family dinners? I looked at her. It depends, I said. Am I going to keep being treated like the one who never measured up? Or is that finally over? She didn't answer right away. Her eyes dropped to the phone still sitting by her plate. Rachel shifted in her seat. Look, I didn't know. I really didn't. I thought you were just out there barely scraping by. Yeah, I said. That much was clear. She winced. I was wrong. I judged you based on what Dad said, what we all assumed. That's your mistake. Not mine. Dad finally leaned forward, elbows on the table, fingers laced together. I didn't mean to belittle you. You did anyway. He looked down at the wood grain. I thought if I kept expectations low, you wouldn't feel pressured to live up to anything. I didn't want you to burn out. I stared at him. The opposite happened. I stayed away because it felt like nothing I did mattered. He nodded slowly, like he was letting it sink in for the first time. I reached into my folder and pulled out a separate envelope, slid it across the table toward him. He hesitated, then opened it. 20% equity stake in Franklin as a Ridgefield subsidiary, I said. Full decision-making power over local client management. The team still reports to you day to day. He looked up, eyes blinking faster than before. I'm not here to replace you, I added. I'm here to make sure your work outlives you. Brenda let out a low whistle. This'll make you one of the highest paid consultants on the East Coast. Nobody said anything for a second. Dad rubbed his thumb over the corner of the paper like he was grounding himself. Then he nodded, just once. I accept. His voice cracked on the last word. No speech, no apology. Just that. And honestly, that was enough. Daniel cleared his throat and stood a little straighter. There's one more thing. Everyone turned to him. There's a meeting tomorrow morning with Horizon Capital. They manage one of the largest national real estate investment portfolios in the country. Franklin's expected to present the integration strategy for the Ridgefield merger. Dad looked startled. Me? Daniel nodded. You'll be the one presenting on behalf of the local leadership team. This is your transition into the executive space. Dad looked down at the contract in front of him, like he wasn't sure if he'd read it right the first time. I pulled my phone from my pocket, tapped a few times, then turned it toward Rachel. Help him open that itinerary. She took the phone and leaned in toward Dad. Okay, click there. Yeah, that one. Dad followed along, squinting a little. Rachel smiled. First-class flight. Boston to D.C. leaves at 9:05. They've got you set up at the Fairmont. Brenda raised her eyebrows. This some kind of joke? Nope, I said. We're not sending him in there like an amateur. He built the backbone of this company. We're going to make sure they see it. I glanced at the room. Everyone was still processing. If the Horizon meeting goes well, I continued, Franklin becomes the exclusive East Coast partner for all Ridgefield commercial projects. Rachel froze. All of them? I nodded. Worth up to $200 million in contracted development over the next 3 years. Brenda's eyes went wide. Holy hell! Dad looked like he couldn't decide whether to breathe or hold it in. He looked at me, voice low. This is really happening? It already happened, I said. Now we execute. He gave the smallest nod I'd seen from him all night, but it meant more than any speech. Brenda stared at me like she was trying to remember if we'd ever had a real conversation before, like I'd walked in with a mask and only now taken it off. Mom blinked back tears and asked, Did you really plan all this? All of it? I looked right at her. Since the day you told me I'd never make a career out of manual labor. The words hit her hard. She didn't deny it. She just looked down. I stood up and grabbed my jacket off the back of the chair. Let's have the next family dinner at my place. Rachel smiled weakly. Brenda nodded like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Dad stayed quiet, still holding the contract. I didn't wait for a round of applause. I just walked toward the door. The night air hit hard the second I stepped off the porch. Cold, quiet, sharp enough to wake me all the way up. I walked across the driveway slow, hands in my jacket pockets, gravel crunching under my boots. My phone buzzed in my back pocket. I pulled it out, expecting a reminder or a calendar ping. It was a text from Dad. I'm proud of you. I just didn't know how to show it. I stood there next to my truck, thumb hovering over the screen, heart pounding like the words were still echoing in my ears. No emojis, no periods, just that. I didn't reply. I just let it sit there. Before I climbed in, I turned back to the house and looked through the kitchen window. The light inside was bright and warm, buzzing like always. Mom had her hands on the back of a chair, still holding herself up. Rachel was pointing at the contract, explaining something to Uncle Jerry, who nodded along like he got it, but didn't. Brenda was on the phone, probably updating someone at her office. And Dad? He was staring down at the title page again, one hand on the corner of the paper, thumb rubbing it like he needed to feel the texture to believe it was real. He looked smaller now, but not weaker, more grounded, like he finally understood the weight of what he'd spent years brushing off. Tomorrow we'd be walking into the biggest meeting of his life. He'd be the one talking, but I'd be right there next to him, making sure he got to say everything he'd been holding back all these years. The vision, the pitch, the ideas that no one took seriously before. He'd finally have the authority to make things happen. And I'd finally stop having to pretend I was something less just to make them feel comfortable. I climbed in, shut the door, and started the engine. As I pulled out of the driveway, I didn't feel bitter, or smug, or even relieved. I just felt still. They saw me now. And more than that, they finally listened.